Louder? Okay. I'm Gloria Simmons, director of the Thacher Gallery, and it's just really nice to see everyone here this evening. I want to extend a welcome to USF students who are here, and I also want to thank staff and students who helped to support this exhibition and this program, so thank you. The gallery's mission is to bring artists, scholars, and the community together and for thoughtful dialogue and on art and its roles in our community. And so I'm really pleased to have this event here tonight, where identity, history, and art converge. We'll have a conversation format. Artist Brian Singer, whose work I hope most of you have now seen in Thacher Gallery, will be in conversation with Stanford curator Aleesa Pitchamarn Alexander. They will be talking for about 45 minutes, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Now it's my pleasure to just introduce the two of them. Aleesa Pitchamarn Alexander is the Robert M. and Ruth L. Halperin Associate Curator of Modern and Contemporary Art, as well as the co-founder and co-director of the Asian American Art Initiative at the Cantor Art Center at Stanford University. She is the curator of the Shazia Sikander Collective Behavior exhibition, which opens tomorrow. So thank you for being here today. Her additional curatorial projects include Spirit House in 2024, Living in Yin Thirsty in 2024, East of the Pacific Making Histories of Asian American Art in 2022, and The Faces of Ruth Asala in 2022. Her accompanying catalog to Spirit House was the first major publication of the AAAI. She also leads that institute's curatorial programs and collection building, working with artists, artist estates, galleries, and collectors. So we're really pleased to have you here. Thank you again for making the time on a busy day. Brian Singer, also known as Someguy, is a San Francisco artist whose practice ranges from installations and participatory projects to intimate works with books. Brian's work has received international attention. The 1000 Journals project, launched in 2000, was turned into a book, a feature-length documentary, and has been exhibited at SF MoMA and the Skirball Cultural Center in LA. He has shown in group and solo exhibitions, as well as being part of public art projects throughout California, including the Torrance Art Museum and the Yerba Buena Center. He is also an award-winning graphic designer. The exhibition in Thacher Gallery, What the World Needs Now Is, brings together Brian's artworks from the last decade to examine censorship, American history and social movements, and his own mixed ethnicity. Please help me welcome both Aleesa and Brian.
Okay, I'm going to elect to use these.
Okay.
If that sounds good to you.
That sounds good.
Thank you, Gloria, for the invitation. It's great to be here from one college campus to another today. I'll make one slight clarification because I have to. As a curator, I am technically not the curator of the Shazia Sikander show, which premiered at the Venice Biennale as a collateral event and was curated by Ainsley Cameron at the Cincinnati Art Museum. We are the third and final venue, and the only West Coast venue for the exhibition for the most comprehensive survey of Shazia's work to date. So please come see it, and yes, it does open tomorrow. So, but I'm very pleased to be here tonight to focus on Brian's practice, and I thought that we could start with context, thinking about your show here at a university, but also being in a gallery that is part of a library space, and how that has informed your approach to this presentation, or did it make you think about things differently when it came to selection, or how did that context shift your perspective on what you wanted this project to do?
Well, I really think it helped anchor the show, meaning I've obviously worked with books for a number of years, and I think that's probably why I was selected for this show. But being so close in proximity to the library itself sort of forced me to think about like what is the entry point, what is the story that's going to like get people into the show. And I loved the fact that the library was willing to work with me and actually remove all of the banned books from circulation from the university library and put them behind lock and key, behind glass in the exhibition. If you noticed when you walked in the hallway there in those cases. So there was some great partnership with not just the work I was already doing around banned books, but the willingness of the university and the library to sort of help lend to that story. So that I think was the first sort of initial, like there's a lot of bodies that work in the show, but like that was the first initial sort of input for me.
Yeah, I think it's effective that you start with, a whole series of work on banned books, and obviously it's like a time in which many of us are thinking about banned books and banned content, and you look through that library and it serves as this kind of archive of intellectual history and almost like a badge of honor, like those are the authors, Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou, George Orwell. These are really formative authors in literature, and I was wondering, do you have any like particular cultural touchstones, because your work is so referential, you're looking at different media, you're looking at history, like are there any kind of like cultural things, books, TV, artists that you consider to be quite formative to you in your practice?
Oh, that's a great question. I feel like I've always had sort of a contrarian point of view, so I gravitate towards authors or artists that are doing work that might be critical of society or culture. So I'm a huge fan of dystopian novels. I'm a huge fan of things like The Handmaid's Tale, things that are like pointing a finger at some of the behaviors that go on in this country. And I think the same is with artists. So just growing up, there was always this sort of, I don't know if it was just my attitude around like trying to be like the provocateur of things, but I think that's where a lot of the inspiration and sort of where I felt like my inspiration came from,
Oh yeah, do we have some images? You made a whole slideshow. So
well, I made a whole slideshow, but
yeah.
it's all of my work. So I don't know if there's any specific images
Oh,
here.
well, we could go to the books since we were just talking about the books.
Yeah, books are.
Which I'm sure you put it there.
So these are the cases that house the banned books. What I found interesting about this was most of the books in the library are actually the classics. And if you're paying attention to what's been going on in the last 5 years or so, certain states like Texas or Florida have been just tremendously increasing the number of challenged and banned books, but mostly by newer authors, so BIPOC or LGBTQ authors or subject matter, which I actually didn't see a lot of in the library. So those are the ones I cut up along with the classics in my pieces.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to note that, like, we think of Fahrenheit 451 as a banned book, but maybe we're not thinking about the fact that, we have books that every year there's a whole list of books that are frequently banned.
It's like every month, if you actually look at the stats, the number of challenges have just skyrocketed, mostly in certain states, but even Utah, I believe, was the first state last year to put a statewide ban in public schools and libraries for 13 titles that include authors like Sarah J. Maas, Margaret Atwood, and Judy Blume. So it's an intentional act that is trying to remove certain voices or perspectives from exposure to a wider audience.
I think one of the interesting things that between looking at visual art and books is that, when you're looking at the written words, certain things are more obvious because they are like spoken, they are out there, but one thing that the visual arts do is that we don't necessarily rely on words, and we can encode our works with meaning, with critique that is not so obvious or apparent to, authoritarian regimes who seek to censor one. So, I think we're all just thinking about this present moment a lot. I'm wondering if this moment has made you reflect upon your practice as a whole and the way that you approach critique and contrarianness, that you brought up that you're a contrarian, you like to think In those terms, does this moment change the way that you approach visual practice?
This moment scares me.
Well, yes, we're all aligned in that.
Over the years, felt like some of the projects I did were sort of on the borderline. Like if you're doing something that everybody loves, maybe you're not trying hard enough. I did a project about a decade ago called Twit Spotting, Texting While in Traffic, where I photographed people that were using their phones on the 101 in stop-and-go traffic.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And then I might have put those photos up on a website. And then I might have...
Public shaming, a little bit.
I might have put those photos on billboards. And to me, if you're on the freeway and you look up at a billboard and you see a photo of someone else who's on that same freeway using their... Like, there was something about that connection that made sense to me. But that project went viral, and within a week span, it had been on the Today Show, Time, it was international, I was getting phone calls. But along with that came some anger and some death threats. And, you know, I look back on that time and, you know, now I can say, oh, you know, it was a badge of honor to, you know, piss people off. But if I thought about doing that today and I think about, like, the tone that's out there in the world, I don't know that I would, like, it's scary enough to get a death threat.
Sure.
I didn't think it was serious at the time.
Yeah,
now I think I'd be a lot more worried.
Yes.
So the tone of today has definitely changed. And it sucks to say this, but like, how far out there how far do I want to stick my neck out there? And that's the worst thing for an artist to feel. But it does play sometimes into like, am I going to go get, you know, do I want to be on Trump's radar is a good example.
Yeah, and I think we're all sort of worried about that. And artists are not going to quit making art. The question is how are you going to do it? You know, how will we do this subversively? How will we continue to do it under the radar? How can we like generate our own languages to keep saying the things that we want to say? Because I think so clearly in the show, so much of your work is a kind of critique of culture, institutional critique. But I've been thinking about what is the role of critique today? Like, what is that? What is it now? And like, what can critique do? What is its purpose? And like, in the context of art, can art serve as critique? And, you know, these are all kind of like long, open-ended questions, but I'm wondering what you might think about those in relationship to your own practice.
I mean, I do feel like a lot of art is critique. A lot of art is a reflection of something that's going on in society, and I feel like there's a lot of that. Like there's a lot of wonderful artists doing pretty major, impactful work. I think that the tone, like the way in which people sort of poke at the administration might differ. Like, I don't know. Like I get so scared that an artist is going to do something and then end up getting completely destroyed because of it. And I think this happens to folks. But the critique has to happen. It's just, is the means the same way? And it's beyond the I mean, the protest posters are great. You know, the funny memes are great. Are they doing anything? I think there's a deeper sort of level of analysis and sort of narrative for a lot of the artists that are like focusing. Like, it's not recent, but like Dred Scott's reenactment of the slave revolt, to me was like the perfect piece of art that probably, it did have some controversy to it, but like to me those are like the things that really stand out is like, okay, you're doing it and you're doing it well, despite what we're dealing with.
Well, I have another question. It's like a bigger question. I didn't like think to lead with all these like big questions, but here we are. So you're thinking about critique and like what art can do in terms of its power, but do you think that art has the power to change things, the world, people? Like, what is your perspective on that?
I mean, I sincerely hope so. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of what I try to do with my artwork, like I don't know that anyone's opinion gets changed. It's really hard to change people's opinion.
You don't think that people confront an artwork and have their minds changed?
I think that there are a lot of so like deeply embedded belief systems that it is very hard to sway someone from that path. I think artwork can create a spark in someone, make a connection, like have that little light bulb go off, where you're moved a little bit in the right direction. I don't know that artwork's going to convince someone to change who they vote for or what they believe about a certain topic. I wish it did. I hope it does, but maybe I'm a little bit of a pessimist in that.
No, I mean, I think I used to think that maybe an artwork could really do that. I don't know now. So much. I mean, I think maybe you're right. I don't know exactly if that initial encounter will cause somebody to change their perspective on something, but it can,
It can
start
make the light
something.
bulb go off.
Yeah.
I mean, I think probably one of the most powerful pieces of art I've seen in my lifetime, might not even be considered art, but is the This Is America video by Childish Gambino. I would hope that opened up a lot of people's eyes. I don't know that it changed much, but like you said, every little bit I think does help.
Yeah, and I think that some of us thought that like in the 2000s and 2010s, seeing artists, especially artists of color, more directly perform and confront this kind of political, social, institutional critique would lead us down some kind of path of like so-called progress, and yet here we are. It's so funny. Somebody like asked on Twitter, they're like, hey millennials, what is like the most delusional thing that you believed back in the 2000s and 2010? And I wrote like in response that the election of Barack Obama would slowly shift the needle and move us to a more like equitable and like inclusive and open-minded place, and everybody just like sad-faced emoji'd me because clearly that did not work out the way we thought it would.
Yeah, there's so much hope and so much idealism that seems to be getting crushed right now. But at the same time, I don't think it's stopping anyone. I think I'm still making art. Everyone's still making art.
Yeah.
But maybe the hopes that it was going to have such a great impact are a little bit diminished now that we've really sort of shone a light on our country, like what's going on right now.
Yeah, I do think it's it's okay, Mary. Yeah, I think it's an important moment because it makes you, moments like this, call into question all the things you took for granted, all the ways that you accepted like what art could and should do and like what artists do, and now you're right. I think that the perspective, it's making me rethink, what does critique do, what does art do, what does it have the capacity to do, and like what do artists do in this moment. And I also think I saw a nice Instagram story from our colleague Christine Wong Yap, this wonderful Bay Area artist as well, where she said today, like, artists, like one of the best things that we can do right now is become kind of archivists of joy and archivists of resilience, where clearly because these histories, like they're taking slavery and mentions of Native Americans out of, state park signage now, that like we are going to be tasked as artists to also help in this. I don't know if you see yourself and some of what you do as part of that, because your work is sort of archival, but also it's like this bridge between critical, archival. I mean, it can be both, right? But
yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's highlighting joy at all. In a lot of instances, it's mostly trying to shed light on things we might have forgotten or aren't aware of.
Yeah.
Or like, again, make people think about something like the economy differently, or, every time they see a car break in with the glass on the street, like think about that differently, what it means to have, like, be living in a city where there's so much wealth, like right up against so many people struggling. Yeah, we went deep on that. You went right into the tough stuff.
I mean, you catch me on a different day. I don't know what's going to happen. This is just today. But no, but I would say, like, your work is also funny. So this is the other thing. Like, you have a sense of humor, which I think is really important in this, like, larger conversation. How do you, like, figure the role of humor in your work?
Well, I think, and maybe this is my background as a designer, like, to get somebody to pay attention, to get somebody to listen, you need some way in, and that can be beauty, it can be humor, it can be something recognizable, and then how do you combine that with the message you're really trying to get across? So
Yeah.
there's a reason why like I'm using familiar objects, books.
Do you have a good
flags.
example that we can look at while you're talking about this? Is there anything that you think is?
Well, let me use the, sorry, there's so much stuff in this deck.
Brian, sorry to interrupt, but your mic is about half the volume of Aleesa's.
Oh, no.
Is it, there, you can't hear me? This is not working?
Unless I'm crazy, which is possible.
Do I need to speak louder?
Yes.
Is that helpful? Okay, sorry. I'll use this piece.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the game Cornhole? You've played it before? Was it fun? Enjoyed it? No? So it's a thing? Okay. Well, I actually have memories of like playing this like, you know, on a field, drinking beer with friends and whatnot. There's a very sort of happy experience that I had with this. And so for me, this piece, which is, the text says, as long as grass grows or water runs. And those are the words that Andrew Jackson used with regards to the promise he made to Native Americans about their duration of their land rights. So broken promise. And so for me, this is like, how do you take something that is familiar and joyful and then merge it with something that is so horrific on the very land, like the very land that I'm enjoying playing this game on. And so to me, it's that, like, that's not quite humor actually, but that is like,
But it is a kind of humor, I would argue, yeah.
The way in, and then the twisting of your stomach as you start to realize what the work's about, and like your own internal, like, I mean, for me, it was like seemed like the perfect match of like horrific joy. Like you're like, here I am in this great country playing this game, and oh my God, this is why I'm here. So, yeah, I try to use like
It's that juxtaposition.
yeah,
right?
something about like an easy way in, and then like a punch in the stomach.
Yeah. No, and I think that's like a good artist does that, because there's a difference. Like you can write an essay, like, or an op-ed as like a kind of critique, like that's like one format, but like in my mind, that's not what an artist does, right? You are doing something else. Like it is a kind of like transformation of particular ideas and moments in time in your perspective as an artist. So I think you employ that well with humor, and then also with the diversity of materials that you choose. And I was asking about that earlier because you use so many different kinds of things in your practice, and a lot of it, you know, some of it is found or like pre-existing objects. And I would love to hear about your approach to materials and like how it relates to concept. Like what's the like Venn diagram there? Like how does that work for you?
I think it usually starts with an idea. There's something that bugs me. There's an observation I've made. There's something like right now, actually, AI is really sort of like needling at me, and I've got ideas, but I haven't quite formed the right way to express that. But it starts with an idea, and then sort of it sits in the back of my head for like 2 months as I sort of process it. And then as that forms, the materials sort of come from that. Like, what is the best mechanism with which I can convey this idea?
Yeah.
But it obviously tends to involve things that are familiar, like the games and the books and the flags, symbols that have their own embedded meaning. Mm-hmm. But to me, the best pieces of art have both. They've got like the right materials with the right message, and are also, it's the designer in me that probably wants them to be visually appealing in some way. So I think in a lot of my art, I'm just trying to get all three of those sort of things to line up perfectly.
Yeah, no, it's sort of hard. I don't want to say calculation because that's not necessarily what art making is about. But and not all artists approach making in this way that you're sort of describing. I had a conversation with Mel Chin, the artist Mel Chin, who also does a lot of works that involve pre-existing materials like you do, and he was essentially saying the same thing, where it was like you are looking for the kind of material that suits the concept, where some artists are driven in the other way, right? They come upon a material, or they look to material to like lead them to a concept. And so I always just love to know about the thought process of like what is happening in your brain when you're making something.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to a piece right here, because there is this piece in the show. formed because you get packages delivered to you sometimes, and I got a package and it has like a bright orange sticker on it and said, "This is a set, do not separate." And for whatever reason, that message like struck me, because some of the other works where I'm sort of exploring my mixed background, it's like these two separate things. Like, am I Japanese? Am I white? What does it mean to be neither but both? And I see this little sticker and it says, "This is a set, do not separate." I'm like, oh, that's me. Like, I'm a combination of these things. So that actually started with a sticker, and then I ended up taking chopsticks that are only useful when you separate them, and writing that over and over and over again thousands of times on the chopsticks to make this piece. And so for me, it was a sticker that spawned the idea, and then it was the chopsticks, and it was like this weird process of me doing repetitive behavior.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of like alchemy of art making that I've always been so fascinated in as a failed artist myself, that like the thing that you do is like you can find a sticker or something like that and it can spark this whole train of thought that leads you down a particular path. And in this case, the path is somewhat biographical, which I understand is a bit of a departure from some of your previous work and certainly from some of the other work in the show. I don't know if you wanted to share a little bit more about that.
Sure. So most of my work, if you've seen the show, is what I'd call observational. It's things that I'm observing about behavior, about our country. It's almost never about me. And it was about 5 years ago my mom passed away, and it started leading me down this rabbit hole of questions about why am I the way I am. And part of that has to do with growing up in a family where I was Japanese and American, but didn't really feel like I belonged to either. And so in the past, 5 years or so, I've started digging a little bit more into this. And it's work that's probably going to take me a while, because doing personal work is a lot harder than doing observational work. Like, I didn't realize how hard it was till I tried to start doing it and finding the voice. And that's probably why there are so few pieces. It actually started with this, which is based on my birth certificate. So 1973, Arlington, Virginia, my birth certificate under color or race of father says white, and under color or race of mother it says yellow. And
wow.
And I was like, oh, okay, was that the term back then? Was that just the doctor, or was that like technical terminology for Japanese? But it's sort of what led to this piece that says white and yellow, but as you would read it reversed in a mirror. But even when you can read it reversed in a mirror, the colors are still flipped. So yeah, that's sort of the rabbit hole that I started going down, and I've been bouncing around with that. The chopstick pieces, obviously nunchucks. Bruce Lee being the only Asian male role model I had growing up. These are wrapped in U.S. and Japan flags that have been dethreaded, and then this series of pieces that are on one of the hallway walls, which depict Hollywood characters in movies that were either Asian or in yellowface played white people playing Asians, as the role models that I had growing up, like Mickey Rooney from Breakfast at Tiffany's, one of the most obnoxious, horrific, portrayals I've ever seen. But that's what I had, and these are juxtaposed against color by number renditions of vintage romance novels. So for me, this was about like who were the role models I had growing up, and what happens when all you've got to look at are Long Duck Dong, or this is Paul Mooney from The Good Earth in yellowface playing an Asian character, and how that affect sort of what I view like my romantic archetypes, for example.
Yeah. And I mean, there are obvious and fair critiques to sort of this kind of representational politics, or like representation in art. But I mean, I always share that like it wasn't until many, many years into a PhD program did I encounter the work of an Asian American woman artist, and I don't know why I never went to look for one, but I think that is also, you just become so immersed in something, it becomes normal, and that was just like the place that I was in and the program that I was in. And so I do think that there still is something powerful in thinking through that, and like thinking through, you know, these kind of examples of like representation that you were confronted with, or like the absence of them kind of in my case, and like kind of like what that does to you in the way that you like move about the world. You know, I talk to Stanford students now, which is like a complete trip that people are born in the 2000s to me, you know, and certain things are just obvious. Like obviously you can have a leading man who's Asian American, you know, like why would we ever call that into question? But it's like not that long ago, you know, this is like, we can probably count on like just a couple, you know, two hands at best, like the number of leading men who are Asian American considered viable romantic leads.
Yeah, I mean, it is great to see in the last decade sort of the shifts that are happening. And oftentimes when I talk about this work to younger people, they're like, oh, but there's plenty of that. What are you talking about? And I'm like, well, what about for the first 40 years of my life? And what about like how I was formed as a human being, learned how to behave, what sort of who I was looking at to sort of model behavior. And that's what's missing. That's sort of me like going back and trying to dig into this stuff. It's like, again, why am I the way I am? And how were those ideas formed and what caused that formation?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's what's going on today is great. We have a long way to go, but I'm who I am now.
Yeah, I mean, so much of like who our identity formation, whether we like it or not, is in part shaped by the things that we consume. And I think that a lot of your work is kind of about that. It's shaped by the cultural like things that we consume, like the books, TV shows, movies, and food, and like where we live. Like we think of ourselves, maybe it's like a very like Western individualistic philosophy, but like we like to think of ourselves as like these individuals that like we have a certain amount of control over who we are. But then to a certain degree, we are shaped by the things that we choose and do not choose to like be exposed to. And I think that that's kind of an interesting part about your work. And actually one of my favorite works in the show is the work, forgive me, I don't remember the title, with the life preservers on the wall. I don't know if we have an image. I
have an image somewhere. There's like a bunch of these.
It's great. No, we just get like the whole, you know.
There we go.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite simple, but I find it to be quite effective. You know, in looking through it, you're kind of looking at an archive of, you know, power and resistance movements like throughout time. And to me, when I see and read like hands up, don't shoot, like I remember the time in my life and like where I was, you know, when Ferguson was happening, you know, with Trayvon Martin, like it is kind of amazing to see that history of the last 10 years reflected through this work. And then also, I think we all could like use a life preserver right now. Did you want to talk about this work a little bit more?
Sure. I mean, in the end, like the juxtaposition of the message against a life preserver is really that these ideas, you know, they can spark movements. The type, by the way, is actually made out of gunpowder. So I don't know if you guys picked up on that, but all the black type is out of gunpowder, which you can also order online. That's weird. Fun fact. Yeah. Gunpowder in the mail.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was surprised too, but then I bought it. So, mostly because I didn't want to go to a gun shop to buy it. I was afraid of that. But the idea that you know, over time, over history, there have been a number of social justice movements, slogans, and people trying to affect change, and they can be sparked in a moment, but they're also how we're going to get saved, and amongst murky waters can be extinguished very quickly. So there's something, again, about all of these ideas converging into this form with a type made out of flammable material. Don't worry, it's been coated, so it shouldn't start a fire. But like that was the right juxtaposition for me when I think about a lot of these movements. And, you know, even going back to like Take Back the Night, does anyone remember that? Okay, like that was like huge when I was in college, and it sort of makes me wonder, like over time, new movements take the place of old ones, galvanize a new generation. Does anyone know what May 35th means?
I was wondering.
Okay, so May 35th is apparently what people were using in China to talk about Tiananmen Square to get around the censors because they couldn't mention the date June 4th. And when I heard that, I was like, my mind was blown. I'm like, I know we're dealing with a bunch of garbage right now, but like, that is a culture that is like really figured out how to get around the people that are watching them.
Yeah, I think that's sort of what I was trying to talk about earlier, is that you will always find a way, and artists especially are great examples of this, to talk about something without talking about it directly like that, you know, and the power in that kind of being sort of oblique or approaching something from like a sideways glance per se, right? And so many great artists do that well, and I think that is, you know, an effective tool that we have as creative people. I think for my last question, since we are on a college campus, I always do love to ask artists about what you would share, what you would recommend, what you would like to impart upon younger creatives, younger artists out there in the world, from, you know, now reflecting on many, many years of experience, what you wish you would have known.
Yeah, that's a good one, because I feel like I'm not in a position to give advice, but I do think that my biggest hang-up, the thing that took me the longest to get over, was just getting started. I'm sure you've got ideas in your head, you've got pieces you want to make, you've got things you want to say, and it might be better just to start saying them and start making them than to wait for it to be perfect. Maybe that's the designer in me that like has to wait till all the pieces make that perfect Venn diagram, but you'll go through more ideas, you'll get there quicker just by putting it out. Like, get used to failure, because it happens a lot, but that's, I think, the resilience that you build to get to the right ideas and your best work. So I think that would be my parting advice.
Yeah, I think failure is so crucial to any creative process, and I mean, I'm my own worst enemy, so I'm like, yeah, we should fail, you know, and then I'm just like, you know, terrified of like doing it myself. But no, and I think especially now where we live in a culture, especially for young people, where they're afraid of having their failures or mishaps recorded and like being made public, where like, I am just so grateful that this was not happening when I was in my 20s. Like, this is not the world that I lived in. But, you know, I still think, at least from a creative perspective, like, you should always feel a kind of freedom to approach and to fail and to try again. And actually, how often you have to do that. I was at a talk I was listening to the great Ocean Vuong give a talk, and he was telling me that his students nowadays, they are giving him drafts that they are like essentially second drafts. He's like, I need the 13th draft. I want you to like, you know, really go over this again. Come back to me like when you have the 12th or the 13th draft, so that we can really like look at this together. Like, you know, there's somehow we just want to satisfy these urges so quickly of producing, but really actually sitting with things and looking at things and looking at your failures and areas for improvement. That focused attention, I think, is so much of what we need right now.
Absolutely. And think about it this way: if you're gonna succeed one time for every 9 times you fail, 1 out of 10, then think about how many tries you need to make to get there. It's sad to say, it's almost a numbers game. Or at least I just keep trying, and maybe I'll get there eventually.
I think you're right. Well, this has been so fun, and I think we could keep talking, but I've asked so many questions. I would love it if other folks have any questions for you that they'd like to ask, and I'm happy to give up my microphone if needed.
No questions?
Brian,
Yes.
I know you're giving all kind of material, but I'm artist, I'm a curiosity. How old are you, practicing in the studio? You do the neon first, you do the painting first, Very dramatic, you're giving all kinds of things.
It is, my studio is almost like a storage space now with all my work. It's empty because everything's here, but it is very hard because I switch up the material. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I need to cut some wood. Other times are like, oh, I need to lay out panels.
You should use my mic.
Yeah, I was going to say, yours works. So it's almost about making sure the space is set up to work on whatever I'm working on. Like if I can clean it up and allow myself. God, I'm just horrible with this mic. It's like off. Is it? I'm holding it too?
I don't know. I didn't do it. No.
Huh. Okay.
Do you want to switch seats? Is it like a seat thing?
But yeah, my studio is set up to like work on a bunch of different types of things, but the challenge is then I end up with tools and materials, and I sometimes wish that I just did one thing over and over again to make it all simple. But because I switch back and forth, it requires a lot of like, almost like the way you set up your studio to work on things, if that makes sense.
Amazing.
Yes.
Thanks for this. This is really interesting. Appreciate your work. Now it's making noise.
Wow, you're just.
This is not my, I'm not, okay.
This is definitely performance.
It's all planned.
I'm not exactly sure what my question is, but I was interested to hear you talk about like no one's mind gets changed or people don't change the way they vote. And I would love to hear a little bit more about that. I don't look at your work and see that you're trying to get people to change the way that they vote. I mean, it's sort of like a really transactional way of looking at it. That it feels like there's something deeper going on than just like trying to get someone to flip a switch. And even the piece that's behind you, which I can't decide whether that's an optimistic or really fatalistic wall of objects, but it doesn't feel like it's designed to push one thing. Like, could you say some more about that? I feel like that there must be more there than just that.
Sure, and I think I might take when someone asks me, do you think art can change people's minds? I think I immediately go to like the combativeness in the dialogue in our country right now, and that people are just, like nothing's changing there in my mind. People are just becoming more entrenched. But I do think that a lot of the work that I do is supposed to like make you think a little bit differently about something. A good example that's not in the show is I've done a whole series around the economy, because a politician will talk about what's good or bad for the economy, but they're not really talking about what's good or bad for people. And so the moment you make that connection, like, oh, carpooling is bad for the economy. Like, think about that. And so they're designed to sort of make you shift a little bit about how you perceive something like the economy that we're all looking at might not be the thing we should be measuring.
I think that your point is a great one, and one of the strengths of your work. And here too, it's like that kind of ambiguity that you can read it in multiple ways. Like, no one wants to go to an art museum and be like taught a lesson about something. Like, art is not there to be like a didactic hammer, you know? It's there to do something else. It's there to do this, to kind of suggest like really a precarity, right? To me, these are like very precarious objects that, you know, suggest life or death, and you can approach it in like different ways. And so I think that's a great point, and I do see a lot of your work doing that. It's just kind of like living in a zone of ambiguity, which I think is so important right now, because we're just like not living in a place where people can be like ambiguous together, you know? It's like much more fraught now than it used to be. So maybe like art is a good place to think through that together.
Yeah, it comes back to luring them in with something, and then just making the slightest little shift in their perception or the way they view something.
Or yours. Sorry.
Or mine, yeah. Yes, in the back.
I was wondering if you could talk about the use of the fabric in the like Harlequin romance novel series, and also why you chose to remove the color from the book covers.
Yes. So let me get back to those real quick. Okay. So for those of you that it's kind of hard to see on these images, but sorry, doing this in reverse. Okay. So the removal of the color was, and the way these are actually set up is to look like a color by number, was really commentary on, because I've got so many books, I've literally got hundreds of these romance novels from the 70s, which were so popular, there are like thousands of them, like one after another. And if you look at them side by side, the covers are extremely formulaic. and it's the same depiction of a female face and a male face in the background, and the scenes change sometimes. So the thinking there was like color by number, like sort of speaking to like the formulaic nature of the romantic archetype of that time, which probably a whole generation grew up on, the same way a whole generation grew up on like Sex and the City. So that was why the removal of color. The fabric was something that I added because I just thought I'd see what happens if you just Google Asian fabric or Asian pattern and then bought it. And to me, again, it was the application of like, how do I insert my culture into these sort of formulaic depictions of romance? My culture being, Mickey Rooney from, if you haven't seen the movie, you probably shouldn't watch it. But I mean, it is truly awful. But like even Long Live Dawn from 16 Candles, like these were the representations of my culture growing up. Yeah. Yes.
I was brought in for a design class today, and that's where I was looking at your work. A lot of it is very it's very set on a one sort of wider societal issue, but I think that some of them, the mirror piece stood out to me a lot. I think it can be applied to a lot of different contexts. But I guess what I'm trying to ask, do you see your work as period pieces, or do you think they represent something wider?
Interesting. I don't know that I've ever considered them as period pieces, so much as some are obviously about a specific topic, while others might be more open-ended. But I do think with my choice of materials and the meaning embedded in them, be it a flag, be it a book, a Bible is different than The Handmaid's Tale, which is different than Uncle Tom's Cabin. And so when you view a piece, you're bringing your own sort of story to the table, and everyone's going to interpret it differently. So I hope that there is, even though I might in my head have my perspective of why I'm doing it, I would hope that everyone in this room walked away with a completely different or unique viewpoint. So in that way, it might be about a subject, but I'm hoping it's not hitting someone over the head with a hammer, if that makes sense. It's not this is the right way to think about it. It's more how do you interpret this? If that makes sense. I don't know if that answered your question. Okay. Yes?
I would love to hear you talk about your book work, because I don't think I've ever heard you talk about it. Would you describe it as altered books? There's certainly an iconography thing that I see happening, and I don't know if you want to speak to any recurrent sort of symbols or motifs that come up, but how would you describe your book work?
That's a great question.
Thank you, that's what your friends are for. And Aleesa may want to, contextualize the work as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a very deep relationship with the books. For me, they were growing up, I read a lot, and it was the one place where I could let my imagination go. I could picture every character in the book. I would see the scenes, so it was an escape for me. Even to this day, I still read physical books. I love paperback books. I love the feel. I love knowing where you're at in the book. So I'm not on a Kindle yet. And then I go and I cut them up. So there is that relationship. But to me, books, again, have that story or meaning to them. So the use of, there's pieces where I use 1984. This is a piece where each of those shapes that you see is from a banned book. And so to me, the book is a material that I'm sort of working my way through in a way. I've done cut paper, I've done collage, I've done redaction. There are pieces where I'll slice into a book and like these and then make shapes out of it. So I don't know if you can tell, but what you're looking at is about a ½ inch of paper that's been sliced through a book, and then those are formed into shapes to make up all of these pieces. So for whatever reason, I feel like someone works with clay, someone works with paint, someone works with another material. Books for me are just this rich territory to take whatever they mean and transform it in a way.
I want to hear more about the shapes.
The shapes. Okay, so the shapes that you see on the right, the diversity of shapes, they're all banned books, and the intent there is to show sort of a variety of ways, a variety of voices, a variety of perspectives. The piece that's on the left side, those are all the exact same shape. Those are all from Bibles. So in my work, when you see like a piece that just has sort of the teardrop or wedge shape to it, those are all cut Bibles, and there's a few of them in the show. Like these, for example, are all cut Bible pieces. And while there's diversity in them in and of themselves, the reason why I'm using the same shape is because it's sort of a monolithic point of view versus what I consider to be like everyone else's point of view, which is where the different shapes come in.
I had a sort of a follow-up to what you were talking about. So you're an artist, you're a graphic designer. How do those things bleed into each other? How do they influence each other? Do they? Like, how do these, are you ever working on a piece and you're kind of going back? I'm just curious about like how those things feed into each other.
I mean, I've had people look at my work and say like, oh, I could figure out you were a designer, because there is sort of a graphic nature to a lot of it. I'm a huge lover of typography and wordplay. So in a lot of pieces, I'll be twisting words or trying to shift their meaning based on the context or the material I'm using. So I do think those sort of like, I don't know if they're normal like design practices that show up in my work, but I do think that there's a connection there. There's also probably a lot of designers are very anal in a way that like the details have to be a certain way, and I do find that in my work I'm also like doing a lot of planning, a lot of like tests to try to make sure that what ends up getting produced is, I don't know, of the right, I don't know, imaginary quality in my head.
Yeah.
It's a little personal. I'm sorry for that. But would you say that the creation of like your artwork has helped with your identity and seeing like the two sides? You did mention that you're half Japanese and half white, and that at times you didn't feel like you belonged in either spaces. But when you create work, you're obviously creating for your point of view. Do you think it's helped you maybe blend those two sides together on your own?
No, thank you for the question. I think that's something I'm still figuring out, and I will say that like using art as a way to dig into those questions about myself, I think has been helpful. I don't know if it figures out who I am, but it has like led me to think much deeper about choices I've made in life, things like ways I've behaved. So it's weird, like I think the art is sort of the mechanism with which to make me dig into those things and think much harder than I ever have in my life, which is again why there's so few pieces in that body of work, because they're taking me so much longer to sort of work through.
Well, if there's no more questions, I just want to thank Glory again. Thank you, Brian. This has been super fun. Thanks to students for showing up. And obviously, I have a soft spot for university art museums and galleries, but I really think that stuff like this is where great dialogue happens. So I'm just always happy to be a part of it. So thanks for showing up.
Thank you.
Now we just get off stage.